It's time for this week's gaming check-in with Sam Miskovich from Ars Technica. Welcome, Sam.
Good Friday to everybody. Hello, hello.
Well, we hear that the PlayStation VR game Rez Infinite made you cry, and you're not ashamed to talk about it, so talk about it.
Was this going to be Tender Feelings Friday? Is that how we're doing this?
Tender Feelings Friday, yes.
I think we even have some graphical transitions with like hearts and tears to go.
I'm never coming on again if you guys are going to really bully me for being a fully fledged emotional adult.
This is our Barbara Walters moment right here.
But I will say, you know, if you are as cold-hearted as my good friends here at TWiT.tv and you need a video game that brings you back to that real emotional center that you've lost after watching all of this tech programming, Rez Infinite might be the trippy sci-fi cyberpunk whirly-girly adventure for you. As anyone who's watched the show over the past year and a half knows, who's seen me go on and on about virtual reality content, I'm pretty crazy about strapping on a headset and trying out a trippy, weird experience. But I can understand that there's hesitation and reluctance for people to put something on their head that warps them around, makes them see a bunch of trippy stuff. It can sound very intense, but Rez Infinite, I think, is one of those incredible experiences that anybody who has the slightest inclination about technology, and when I say that, I mean anybody who had joy grabbing that Wii remote for the very first time and playing Wii bowling with their mom or something, they owe it to themselves when the PlayStation VR kit comes out, assuming they can get their hands on it since it's going to be limited, to try Rez Infinite. Rez was a game that came out in the year 2001 on the Dreamcast, and then again 2002 on PlayStation 2, since no one had the Dreamcast. And it was this incredibly strange rhythm adventure game. Now, remember, rhythm gaming at the time was such a curio of the gaming world, as in Parappa the Rappa,
oh, yes.
Dance Dance Revolution, these games that gamers know about and that non-gamers like make fun of. And this sort of came at that same time. It was actually created, the creator, Tetsuya Mizuguchi, I'm so sorry, I always blank on his name. Tetsuya-san, he created this after going to a rave. He was making games for Sega, went to Germany for some sort of event, went to a rave and tripped out, couldn't believe what it was like, and said, I want to make a video game like this. However, the game in 2001 didn't quite work. It clearly was playable, but you had to use this joystick system to move your head around in the game and point at all these weird things, and it just didn't quite work in terms of creating this sort of rave-like experience that he was going on about. Well, Rez VR essentially says, okay, now you're in this trippy world, but you simply look at things in trippy space and use a controller at that point to interact. And it's hard to explain why it works so well, other than to say the combination of light, sound, and motion is very seamless once you have VR. When you use your head instead of a controller, when you are actually looking at this thing that's sort of exciting you, all of the synesthesia stuff kicks into gear. Now, I've gotten to play it a few times, and this week I got to finally talk about the very final bit of the game called Area X, which was made newly for this system. Everything else in the game is from the original 2001 version, and now they've taken modern technology and said, what would this 2001 game play like if it was made now? The original game actually still holds up very well. It uses this sort of Tron-like wireframe style, and it just feels really cool to see everything in the universe essentially be made of stars, is the short way of putting it. You're floating around. Everything kind of looks like a bunch of stars coming together, pulsing in, pulsing out. All these tiny, tiny particles and dots and explosive effects coming together to create this trippy stuff that you fly around and interact with. Again, when you look at or aim at things in this game, in this virtual reality experience, it creates sound and light. So as you trigger stuff and shoot at it, it adds to the EDM music that is playing. I know I'm kind of rambling here, but it was really cool to be sitting in the same room as the creator and then talk to him about it. The crying part I mentioned, because it has this sort of emotional wordless story that plays out as you do it. And there's also this really intense feeling of, I'm really doing this. It really feels like I'm part of this incredible scene. And I explained this sort of intense feeling to its creator, and he responded that he said, you know, I cry all the time. He was talking about showing this game to people for the first time after months and months of working on it just in his own studio. And it was just one of these very bizarre hotel lobby video game expo moments for me. This was at PAX West for a few weeks ago. And I just found myself going up to him and giving him a big hug. It was kind of awesome. And what I then said in my article was, even if you don't get to sit with this guy and hug him, it really does feel like a full emotional experience, the kind of thing where this man is handing you a game experience and saying, this is like us hugging, like us having this emotional sharing. I don't mean for that to sound creepy. Please understand that it's just cool. I feel like I've just been talking and talking without you guys interrupting. I could really keep going about this game, but I really do enjoy it, and it comes out in October.
It's really, I mean, honestly, what you're talking about with this game is kind of what has kind of stoked my interest in VR, this kind of transportation to another world that goes beyond just looking at a screen on a wall, but rather kind of brings you into the experience. And I didn't have the chance to play the game when it was on Dreamcast. I thought Dreamcast was a great platform, by the way, but I didn't get a chance to play it back then. But I can imagine the amount of time between then and now and what you can do with this entirely new medium, you know, inside of a goggle. I mean, I hope that we will see more situations like this where it's not just kind of a video game that you play and sure, yeah, it's cool to be surrounded by it, but because it breaks through an additional wall, you end up with this extra layer of emotion that makes the game that much more special. There
was something about it. I remember back in the day, people said this game is ahead of its time. And here we are now finally matched with a thing that doesn't cost $1 zillion. It's $399 is pretty expensive VR, but it is now its time. We are 15 years later. It is the time for a trippy, weird experience like this that does make sense for moving your head around. I don't like gimmicks. I like VR. If you're going to use your head, make it really make sense. Don't make it hurt. Don't make me dizzy. It's very comfortable. It's very exciting to play. It feels awesome. And I know there's going to be a lot of kiosks with PlayStation VR because Sony wants people to care about this. So as the weeks roll along, as this is out there, if you do get a chance to check it out, 5 minutes, just at the very least, 5 minutes of this game will be worth your time. So keep your eyes out at malls, at stores, wherever you might possibly see PlayStation VR in the coming weeks.